Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Benzel back here. We are going to be doing scale 1.4, which is on angle pair relationships. So I do want to take a time out for a minute and just tell you the four main rules of geometry, plus one more. And this is actually from that Euclid's Element book. And I'm just going to say it to you in plain English. Rule one, you can measure distance. So if we want to find the length of things, we can use a ruler and find out what that distance is. Rule two, you can measure angles in degrees. So this is what we call the protractor postulate. Rule three is you can add two distances together. So this would scale 1.3, which is the segment addition postulate. And rule four is that you can add two angles together, and that is the angle addition postulate. And then we have a fifth rule that is actually up to historic debate. If you Google search parallel postulate, you'll actually see that there's a lot of debate, but we will take this to be true in our class. And that is parallel lines are two lines that never intersect. So those are the 4+1 main rules of geometry. So please make sure you're kind of writing these down because these are very important and what we are going to be building off of as you study geometry. All right, so these are the common angle pairs that you're going to see, and I'm going to write down what they look like and how to set it up as well. So supplementary angles, these are angles that add to 180 degrees. And what it looks like, well, supplementary angles could be like next to each other. And we will actually talk about what this is a little bit later on, because it's actually another vocab word on here too. Or you could have, two separate angles, like maybe the 120 and then an angle that's like 60 degrees. And we could say that those are supplementary as well. Complementaries, these are angles that add to 90 degrees. So add the angles to 90 degrees. And where we kind of see this is when you have like a corner, you could have two angles, like maybe this is 30 degrees and 60 degrees, and they add to 90 degrees. Vertical pairs are congruent to each other. So vertical, I like to call them like chopstick angles. So like these two angles are vertical. We could also have a situation where we have angles that are like that. And they're called vertical because they only share a vertex. So these are angles that share a vertex. Linear pair, and we could see here that the only thing that they share is the vertex. That's the only thing that they have in common. Linear pair, this is adding the 180. And these actually must be next to each other. Or as we will say, adjacent. So this is where we have a line. And we can actually see that the straight line makes 180 degrees. So I'll just use a different color. Maybe I'll use my dark green. And we can actually see that this dark green angle that I created is 180 degrees. So that's a linear pair. And then adjacent angles, these just mean angles that are next to each other. So and these are just random angles that are just next to each other. And I'm just going to draw like a few different types. And we don't get into like problem solving. Like adjacent is not going to give you a lot of information. So please make sure that you have this table down. So the how to set it up tells you what you need to do algebraically to come up with the correct setup every time. And what it looks like is going to help you with like the picture problems as well. All right, picture example level 1. These are mainly numerical. And my suggestion would be when you have this type of situation, I would look for the easiest angle to solve for first. One thing I notice here is that this is a linear pair. And a linear pair tells us to add the angles to 180. So I'm going to do 105 plus B equals to 180. So I'm going to just solve for angle B. And when you get a lot of practice with these, they will start becoming more second nature, but I always like the first time just to make sure that you're kind of just showing the setup. And then I can actually also see that C and B are vertical angles. And vertical angles are nice because we can see that they are immediately congruent to each other. So I'm going to say that that's 75 degrees. And there'll be a space in your Delta math assignment for you to put those measures as well. All right, another type of picture example that you'll see here, we can see that this is a 90-degree angle. So these are complementary. Ooh, not 900-degree, 90-degree angle. Complementary. So this means that I add the two angles to 90 degrees. So I'm going to write 58 plus A equals to 90 degrees. And I'm going to subtract the 58 on both sides. And I get that A is equal to 32 degrees. All right, this is a more complicated picture example. With these, you always want to make sure that you are starting with like the vertical angles first. So tip, start with the vertical angles because you know that those are going to be congruent. And then angles that create a straight line add up to 180 degrees. So I would say the easiest angle to start with is angle D. So I'm just going to say that angle D is 75 degrees. Since 75 and D are vertical. And then one thing that I notice here is that these three angles, so I could say that 28 plus measure of angle D plus measure of angle F equals to 180. And I know that D is 75. And I have 28 plus 75. So that's going to be 103 degrees plus measure of angle F equals 180. Subtract the 103 from both sides. And this is going to be 77 degrees. Oh, and lo and behold, this is a 28. So therefore, the angle E, which is vertical, is going to be 28 as well. Now, I will say that when you get going with these, people often do these in their head, and that's good and all. That's actually showing that you know your definitions really well. But if you're actually taking the time to justify why the angle is that way, so like for instance, why the 28 is the 28 with being the vertical angle, you're actually going to get better at finding like reasons in the proofs. So that is something to keep in mind. This is conceptually, going to be a harder problem geometrically, just because there's so many different types of angle pairs. But we did not go in the algebra yet. The algebra problems are going to be a little bit easier and simple diagrams, but they are going to have a little bit of algebra. I can see pretty quickly that this is a linear pair. So I'm going to add the two angles to 180. So I'm going to say that 7p minus 1 plus 90 equals to 180. So I'm going to say that this is 7p plus 89 equals to 180. So subtract 89 from both sides. So I get 7p equals to 91. Divide by 7, and I'm going to get that p equals to 13. And it's just solve for the value of p. Now, sometimes they will make you actually find out what the angle is. So just make sure that you are reading the directions for that. All right, the last example will not have a picture, but it will have, it says that A and B are complementary angles. So I like to circle the vocab word, and you should refer back to earlier in your notes. Think about what do complementary angles add up to? And they add to 90 degrees. So all the time I get, situations like, oh, the directions here in this problem aren't very clear. Well, if you actually take the time and define what a complementary angle is, it will tell you exactly what you need to do. So it's going to say that measure of angle A plus measure of angle B equals to 90 degrees. So I'm going to have 6x plus 22 plus 7x plus 16 equals to 90. And I'm going to solve for x. So I'm just going to combine my like terms. So I got 6x plus 7x, so that makes 13x. And then I have 22 plus 16, so that's 38, equals to 90. And I'm going to just solve for x. So subtract 38 on both sides. So I have 13x is equal to 52. And I'm going to divide by 13. So 52 divided by 13 is 4. So that's x equals 4. Now, if you stopped here on your mastery and you have this as your shown work, you would get most of the credit, but not all of the credit, because it's asking us to find the measure of angle B. So we do know that the measure of angle B equals to 7x plus 16. So I'm just going to put in my x. So I got 28 plus 16. So that is equal to 44 degrees. So those are the type of examples that you are going to see on the skill in Delta Math. Please make sure that you have that chart down with all the types of angle pairs really well in these notes, because this is something that you're going to want to refer back to. So thank you very much for tuning in, and have a great day.